We're on.
Hi,
Welcome.
oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for having me here. And thank you all for joining us for this session. For those of you who are getting up early in the morning to do so, I really appreciate it. I'm actually Zooming in from Yonkers, New York, so it's evening for us. We just finished dinner here. So what I would love you to do is before I get us started, it would be great to just learn where you're Zooming in from. So in the chat, we could warm up the chat by sharing where in the world you are. That would be great. Can tell. That's wonderful. So we have people all over the world, and obviously some of us are in places where we wish we could get to the place we need to be, right? So we're all over the world doing our work. And I really appreciate you all joining us for this session today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but also share with you a Google slide deck that so that you can have this as a resource. So if you look in the chat, I just sent you a link to a slide deck. And if you could open that up in a different browser so that you have it for when we go into breakout rooms. But otherwise, I'll share my screen so that you can see the resources that we're using today. All right, can everyone see the screen okay? If I can get a thumbs up, wonderful, thank you. So we're here today to talk about nurturing a learning community, a deep dive into the LEARNS framework. And as Ed shared with you, my name is Nicole Brittingham Furlong. I'm the director of the Klingenstein Center for International and Independent School Leadership at Teachers College, Columbia University. And I'm also the co-founder of LEARNS Collaborative, which is a catalyst and think tank for independent school change. So what I'd like to do this morning for you is to have you practice some mindful practices to start. And so in your seat where you are, if you could get comfortable and allow yourself in where you are this morning or this evening to either wind down or start up your day with tuning into the sound of your own breathing. So we're going to take 30 seconds to just get comfortable in our seats and just pay attention to the sound of the rhythm of your own breath. Okay, and I'll start the timer now. Okay, so if everyone could find their way back to this Zoom room, and just in the chat, if you could share how taking just 30 seconds to pay attention to your own breathing felt. How did you feel when you were tuning into yourself? And once you post, if you could take a moment to read the chat. So there's a lot of relaxed peacefulness, feeling grounded after a busy day, calm and focused, a lot of calm, right? So I start us off with that mindful practice to remind ourselves that it doesn't actually take much to find that place of calm. 30 seconds, tuning into yourself. You don't need anyone else's voice. All you need to do is take time to pay attention to yourself. And that mindful practice can be used on your own, or you could even use it with your faculty at a meeting to get people settled and to help them arrive to the task at hand. So I share that work with you because it links to what we're going to do today, which is nurturing mindfulness and well-being in our practice as school leaders and educators. You've already heard my name. My name is Nicole Furlong. I use she, her pronouns. And this is just a little bit more of my information. These are my 3 children in the corner. I identify as Black. I'm adopted. I'm married. I have 3 children. And I was born and raised in the United States, where I went to public school and earned a doctorate in English. And I love hiking. I love reading. I also love traveling. And I'm hoping that once the COVID world is safe again, post-COVID, that I'll be able to travel to some of the places that you are working and living in, places that I haven't had the occasion to visit yet. And I remain in education because I believe our schools and our world depend on educators who are committed to leading learning and to learning how to listen to others and to each other more effectively. During this session, we are going to focus on nurturing. So we're going to nurture mindful practice, which we've already practiced a little bit. You'll hear about the Klingenstein Center. We'll learn about the LEARNS framework. We'll nurture 3 things: equity work, well-being, and creativity, and learn how to do that for ourselves and for our schools. And then we'll spend time doing a little bit of meditation and gratitude practice. And then I'll open things up for questions. At any time during the session, even before the question and answer session, if you have questions or you have ideas, comments that you want to add to this space, please feel free to unmute yourself and do so, or share your ideas and questions in the chat, and I will make sure that I monitor the chat just in case you put something there. Our essential question for this session is: how might nurture take center stage in our professional lives and in learning about our schools? So I think this is a particularly powerful question to ask in a moment where, no matter where we are in the world, we are living in a pandemic, at least one. And educators all over the world are reporting that they are burnt out, that they're exhausted, that they are working harder than they ever had to reimagine school for our students. And so it's really important for us to remember that as busy as we get, as extended as we are, it's really important for us to nurture self-care and compassion for ourselves. So first, I'm going to talk about the Klingenstein Center, just so you know what we are. The Klingenstein Center has 5 programs. We have the Klingenstein Summer Institute for Early Career Teachers. It's fully funded and it's a 2-week fellowship, so it's free for participants. Participants also earn 4 graduate level credits when they attend that program, and it's a highly competitive program to get into. The second set of programs are master's programs. We have a master's in education, both a year-long program and a 2-summer program that people can come to New York in the summers and then return to their schools during the year. We also have a dual degree program that is a master's and a business degree from Columbia Business School or from INSEAD in France. And then we have a fully funded Heads of School program. So it's a 2-week fellowship, and heads of school from all over the world come together to New York to study and to connect with each other. And what's wonderful about that program is that the heads cohort stay in touch well after the program is over, and they find that they have real support among the heads that they meet in that program. Our idea about a theory of change is that if schools need to change, then it means that our teaching practices and our leadership practices also need to change. As you can see from the diagram, we highlight 3 important aspects of education. The first is diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. The second is social emotional learning. And the third is the science of learning. And so we bring those 3 pillars together to design all of our experiences for educators as they're learning to lead and teach with us. Our alumni network extends over 132 interconnected cohorts. We have now just over 4,000 alumni in 65 countries on 6 continents. So even though you haven't been, I don't think any alumni are on this call, but I am sure that you may be working with some of our alum. And so we really do have a global network of educators to draw from and to learn from as we think about and talk about leadership in schools and teaching in schools. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the LEARNS framework. Before I do, does anyone have any questions about the Klingenstein Center? And if you do, you can put it in the chat or you can unmute. Okay, I think we're good. So again, if questions come up, just let me know either in the chat or by unmuting yourself. So now we're going to talk about the LEARNS Collaborative, which is another organization that I'm a part of. I'm a co-founder of. At the LEARNS Collaborative, we believe that learning is the most powerful way for school to cultivate and unleash the potential of its people. And that includes students and adults alike. LEARN stands for listening, engagement. And here I want to pause to talk a little bit about engagement, this idea from Robert Kegan's and Everyone culture. Engagement being about becoming more of the person one was meant to be and bringing more of oneself into the world. So that is the idea of engagement that I want us to hold with us as we think about the LEARNS framework. The third part of LEARNS is the A, which is asking. Inquiry is a very important part of the LEARNS practice. Reflecting is the R of LEARNS, and we know from cognitive neuroscience that reflection is one of the most powerful practices to cultivate to deepen learning. And without reflection, learning rarely happens. The N of LEARNS is nurture, which is where we're going to focus the rest of our time in this workshop today. And then the S stands for two things. One is sharing, so sharing between colleagues, between schools, between networks like this one, and also sense making. Literature on leadership, whether it's in schools, nonprofits, or businesses, talk about the importance of being able to make sense of an organization, of a moment, particularly in terms of heightened ambiguity and increased change. So just think about the importance of sense making in a moment like COVID-19, where we're dealing with a pandemic and quick pivots in our school environments, and according to the guidelines of our local areas. And so sense making becomes a really important habit and practice to develop. Okay. And so a school that learns focuses on the practices of listening, engaging, asking, reflecting, nurturing, sharing, and sense making through systems thinking, right? The understanding that these practices just don't happen in one place in school, but it happens in all areas of school for it to really take hold. It's important to practice the framework in team learning, in building a shared vision for what we're doing, in understanding and unmaking our mental models, the assumptions and beliefs that we bring to the work we do, and personal mastery, and to the benefit of everyone. So we're going to focus on nurture, and I just want to press pause here for a moment because there is a question in the chat. Nolan, you were asking, is there a place to apply for the programs? At the end of the slide deck, there is a link to the Klingenstein Center website, and there you can find all information for applications. Our summer program applications have closed, but we do have the opportunity to take applications if they come in late from this group, since I'm just telling you about the program. So at the end of the program, if you are interested, I would encourage you to visit that website, but also to email me at the email address that's on that slide, in order to let me know that you're interested in more information and applying, and we can get you the information you need quickly. Thanks for the question. All right, so now we're gonna tune into one area of the LEARNS framework for today, and that is nurture. So what I mean by nurture is to cultivate, to tend, or to foster. And it's a synonym, nurture is a synonym of nourish. Both of the words in English derive from the Latin verb nutrire, which means to suckle or to nourish. And originally the verb nurture meant to feed or to nourish. Okay, so it basically is, what do we cultivate? What do we foster? And I'm sure in other languages, I'm wondering, actually, this might be good to put in the chat. For those of you who are fluent or speak on some level another language, are there other words that sound like they mean nurture that you could share with us in the chat or share by unmuting? So what are some words that you use in different languages to mean nurture or to cultivate or to foster? Does anyone have any words to share? So there are a few people who are only English speakers. Yeah. I mean, if you speak any Romance language based, right, then nurture is probably nutrire or nutiere. But it's interesting to think about the different ways that different languages allow us to think about this notion of nurturing and cultivating. At the heart of nurture is a focus on well-being, belonging, justice, relationships, and purposeful support of the learning and growth of everyone in a school community. So the first area that we're going to practice nurturing in our schools is what we call DEIJB, which are letters that are being used more and more in our schools as we think about equity work. Those letters stand for diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. And just for those people who came on a few minutes ago, I'm going to share with you the slide deck again in the Google chat, in the Zoom chat. You'll see a link to a Google Doc that you can take with you, but you'll also use in breakout rooms in a little bit. So diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. So the question is, how do we nurture these really important, valuable values in our schools? So we start with John A. Powell's call here. This is a call to enhance public love, which is justice. This is a call to intentionally support the creation of structures informed by and informing our sense of social justice. This is a call to become responsible for the institutional structures we inhabit and that inhabit us. This is a call for self and world making and for the bridge between them. It is a call to create and live the predicate for a beloved community. So from this idea, what I read is a beautiful call for what Powell calls justice is a public love. What is it about these words here, this notion of public love as justice, that you would want to draw from and nurture in your school communities? And you can share your ideas in the chat. Thank you, Nolan. So a call for self and world making and for the bridge between them. So we might think about how might we cultivate that self and world making, or how do we cultivate that self and world making in our schools? What are some other ideas here that we would want to cultivate or nurture in our schools? Communication, valuing all voices. We are all responsible. And the idea of compassion. And I want to go back to the Glenn's post, the value of all voices, the idea of valuing voices by listening, right? So both having a voice and having an ear for those voices. A beloved community. We just think about how powerful it would be for our students to think of our schools as beloved communities, places where they are loved and that they carry in the world with them as places that they themselves consider beloved. Active involvement, school structures to uphold justice, and genuine interest in human beings. This is a great list. So I would encourage you to think about, just for one moment, just in your own space, where you're writing or where you're taking notes, to ask yourself, what is it about your school currently that creates community for all, or creates a beloved community, or school structures that uphold justice? Or what are some things you might do to nurture these elements that you've highlighted in the chat? So let's make a list of things you do already and things that you might consider doing to nurture this work. So just 2 minutes in your own space, and then we'll share. Okay, if you could find a place in your writing to pause. So we have a few shares in the chat. We have a school working on implementing restorative justice practices. The ISY is facilitating a worldwide Students Without Borders to bring students and other teachers together. So a way to bridge and build community across borders. And just providing, and Glenn, providing structure and context so that all members of the community feel they can be heard and their voice is valued. These are wonderful examples. And I'm sure you all have more in your own space, both things that you would like to try and things that you're trying to cultivate and nurture even further. And I'll save the chat too, so that we have, I think I can save the chat. If I can, I'll save it so that we have these ideas, but make sure you're visiting the chat so that you can draw from the ideas of other colleagues. So thank you for sharing those ideas. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually go into breakout rooms, and we're going to spend some time delving into this idea of ritual making as a way to nurture equity and inclusion. Oh, Dale, this is great. Implementing whole school well-being days. That's wonderful. There'll be hopefully some material later on in this session that will help give you some ideas for those well-being days. So now we're going to switch to ritual making. And what I want to do is have us think about rituals as recurring acts that shape and reinforce new behaviors and understandings. They could be as little as, the person who greets families and students when they arrive at school every day. Who greets them at the door. Maybe the head of school does, maybe a division head, maybe the receptionist, right? It can be as little as what happens in a school when someone has a birthday. or the way that you close a school day. So rituals can be quite powerful, even though some of them are quite small. They can be quite powerful in transforming and sustaining a culture and an individual. Okay, and again, you have these slides, so make sure you have them open right before I take you to breakout rooms. So Elena Aguilar talks about rituals as the biggest small action that you can make at any given time. So what I want you to do is go into your breakout rooms, and I want you to imagine what is the biggest small action you can take to begin nurturing equity, anti-oppression, and social justice in your schools. Okay, what is the biggest small action? And I focus on the small action, the ritual, because oftentimes when we're trying to nurture equity and inclusion and belonging, it feels like really big work and it can get overwhelming quite quickly. But if we take small actions, small steps every day, they really do add up to big impact. So I'm going to invite you to breakout rooms in a moment. When you go into the breakout rooms, you will find a slide that corresponds with your room number. Here, this is room number 1. All of you have the ability to edit this slide for your room. So if someone could choose or volunteer to be a scribe, and you will share, just write down the salient ideas that come up in your group discussions. Okay. Are there any questions before I invite you to breakout rooms? All right, so I'm going to go ahead, and if you have any questions, just raise or call me from where you are, and I think I can zoom in and out of different rooms, okay? So you should see an invitation now, and enjoy your conversations with each other. Hi, do you see your invitation to a breakout room? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm Erico's assistant director.
Everyone back, thank you. Yep. Thank you all so much for engaging in those conversations with each other. There was one question that I heard in a breakout room about rituals that you are that you might be using in your schools that are dealing with any relational conflict between students. So if anyone's seen an uptick in students having a hard time dealing with each other because they're on Zoom so much, at least when they come together. Any strategies about how to deal with that, particularly for younger students, or rituals that you might consider being useful? I know, Michelle, you were asking that question. I left the room before anyone answered. Did you get any helpful tips?
We discussed the role of a school counselor supporting pastoral care. Also in my school, the counselors have been working with closely with the student affairs department and also supporting cross-grades advisory programs. Aside from one-on-one sessions.
Mhm.
Also, in my grade, we've been promoting random acts of kindness, trying to embed this mindfulness and awareness in kids. Also, or try to leverage their energy in somewhere else so that they can get busy and try to collaborate to a certain shared goal, such as currently grade 6 being working on a sort of a service project. They chose their SDG of zero hunger, and they create some artworks so that they're being engaged and then collaborating. They learn from each other so we provide opportunities for them to work on a shared task so that they might ease their tension or conflicts. So
yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that out. And I know there were others in other rooms. I overheard Glenn talking about those one-to-one meetings, right? And so thinking about the ways that we have rituals when we're face to face, but also the rituals that we can create online in our virtual space that make up for the loops that have been broken in our communities, right? And to make up for those moments that tend to be serendipitous during the day. You know, you bump into someone in a hallway and you exchange a few kind words or a joke or a glance, right? And that creates community. When we're on Zoom or in Google Classroom, we just don't have that happenstance occurring. And so we need to be much more, much more intentional in some ways about how we create those rituals for the virtual space. Right. So there's some good material in the slide decks for you to look at after the session is over, certainly, to help spark your creativity around the area of ritual making. And remembering that rituals can be, they're small acts, but they have really big impact, right? They mean a lot to people. Okay, so now we're going to shift to our second area of nurturing. We're going to nurture well-being, which resonates with a lot of what a number of you mentioned on your slides and in your breakout rooms, the mention that teachers are so tired, right? And I know that you all are probably very tired as well. But I often notice that when leaders get on a call, they are more likely to talk about how tired their teachers are, which speaks to the quality of your leadership. You care about the people who report to you. And so I appreciate that. But what I want us to do is spend some time nurturing some well-being for ourselves so that we can help others do it for themselves, both adults and students alike. Okay, so this is a tool that you have in your slide deck that you'll take with you. It's basically a well-being indicator tool for students, but you can also use it for adults. So if you look around the circle, these are all the elements that help to make well-being. The environment, right? And this tool, we could think of environment as both our in-person campus, our physical campus, but also our virtual campuses, right? Our virtual learning spaces that we've created for students. Safety and security, the relationships we have with each other, which we talked about a little bit, right? How do you maintain relationships and how do you manage conflict? Our mental health is, and we hear this all over the world at this moment for the past year, mental health is on the front of mind for everyone, right? How do you maintain it? How do you cultivate mental health? Cognitive health. So how are we making sure that we are learning in a way that is healthy and will cause enduring learning? Our physical health, and just think about how difficult it's been for a lot of us to be active as we may have once been, because we're doing a lot of this. We're sitting on Zoom, right? Connecting with each other, but we're sitting. And so physical health is really important for well-being. The community, right? That sense of belongingness and connection, and having a purpose. Why are we together? What can we do together that we couldn't do with any other group? Right? So this is an indicator, a wheel that you can use in your schools. You can share it with your teachers. You can even ask students to look at it and maybe you translate it into their words so that they can even self-assess their well-being and to report back to you. Okay, so that's a tool that you can take with you. So why is self-care so essential? So I'm going to share some quick data points with you. 85% of teachers report work-life imbalance affecting their ability to teach. These are data points that are pre-COVID. Now that we're in COVID, close to 99% of all teachers report work-life imbalance. Okay. 30% of teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years of entering the classroom. And then we have data about principals. 50% of our school principals leave their jobs within 3 years. That's a global statistic. 48% of principals reported being under great stress several days a week, and that data point has gone up to 77%. 59% of principals report being very satisfied in that role. That's a decline from 2008. It has dropped since COVID. 75% of principals report that the job has become too complex. That number has also risen to 92%. And 89% of principals report that the principal should be held accountable for everything that happens to a child in a school. That's a lot of burden on one person. And then from 2020, so this is our COVID world, our pandemic world, our racial reckoning world. The 5 most mentioned feelings among teachers are anxiety, they're fearful, worried, overwhelmed, and sad. Really not words that we want to cultivate in our teachers, right? Where's the joy? Where's the commitment, the purpose, right? And so in these moments, it's extremely crucial and important that we attend to self-care and well-being. So how do these data points relate to what you're seeing in your schools right now? So if you just share in the chat, or you can unmute and share. Given the data that I showed you, how does that picture relate to your experience of school right now? So Darren is reporting a highly overwhelmed staff, right? You've been remote since March. Yes, and our staff at the Clanstein Center has been remote since March as well. And the data doesn't surprise you, right? So we're seeing it, we're feeling that in our schools every day. And the toll of constant change, right? As well as uncertainty, right? We're planning for things we don't know we're going to be able to do so that we're prepared, right? And in some ways that speaks to the great capacity of our schools and our commitment to serve our students. On the other hand, it puts us in great position to be totally overworked and totally overwhelmed and exhausted. Right? And we're just seeing the long hours you're emotionally spent, right? So a couple of ways to, even in this moment of heightened anxiety and fearfulness and uncertainty, there are a couple of things that we can do to help sort of lower our anxiety and to take care of ourselves. 7 to 8 hours of rest can increase mental clarity, and that rest doesn't have to be sleep. It can be meditation. It can be just taking a break from a Zoom call. For those of you who are leaders in schools, try to, if you can, if you're in a space where it's safe for people to do so, would it be okay sometimes for people to take meetings while they're on a walk so that they're not sitting at their desk? Do you encourage breaks during the week or during the day where they're not expected to be on for office hours or for special help, but they can really take time to take care of things that they need to in their own lives? I love the idea here, Dale, the idea of being creative together, right? Making together, brainstorming together. So having energy go somewhere else, right? In a way that's collaborative. And then one other suggestion I would make is that this is kind of what we would call old school, but instead of connecting on Zoom, because oftentimes what we do is we'll work all day on Zoom, and then we might get on for like a wine and cheese event with our friends, or we might connect with family on Zoom, right? Instead of doing that, giving your mind a break from the screen and just pick up the phone and call someone. Just talk to them in a traditional dial the number way, right, can really give us a different sense of being able to listen to each other's voice and to connect with each other without also having to deal with watching each other on a screen. Okay, so those are some things that you can encourage with yourself, but also among your faculty. Definitely keep sharing ideas in the chat so that we can learn from your expertise as well. Being able to tune into yourself. So the way that we started this session with taking 30 seconds to just listen to your own breathing, right? Ask yourself at different points of the day, am my mind full? Meaning, is my mind full of all this clutter and all the things I have to do? Or am I being mindful, right? And I love this image of, this is like me walking my puppy. I'm thinking of all the things I have to do, and the puppy is just really present, right? Just in the moment, right? So how can we practice being in the moment more? Because if we don't, our minds are so overrun and overworked that we never get a break. Even when we're sitting still and doing nothing, we're still racing, right? So that's really important to remember. being self-aware and self-tuned. Here's an exercise I'd like you to do, and you can do this in your own space. Just ask yourself, what do you bring to your school? So just note for yourself, what do you bring? What gifts do you bring to your school every day? And what would you like to receive from your school? And then what brings you joy? So if we could just take 1 minute to answer those prompts. What you bring to your school, what you would like to receive, and what brings you joy. Okay, so if you could find a place in your writing to pause, and if you could share either what you would like to receive or what brings you joy in the chat. And make sure that after you post that you take a moment just to visit the chat yourself. As you're doing that, I also want to acknowledge Rachel's earlier comment about compassion fatigue, right? That idea that we are, as leaders, showing compassion for everyone else. And so what would it feel like to be able to practice some self-compassion, which we're going to do in just a moment, actually. Let's see what you're posting in the chat now. The community coming together brings you joy, seeing students enthusiastic for learning. So bringing curiosity and commitment. So what's important to note about an exercise like this is just the act of taking time to remind yourself of what brings you joy in a moment where you're feeling exhausted and overworked can actually do a great deal of good for your health. It actually decreases stress. It allows for an opportunity for you to take at least a little break, and it allows you to show yourself some self-care. Right? So even just thinking about what brings you joy has health benefits. Okay, so think about using these questions in a faculty meeting, maybe. Right? If you zoom on and you start your meeting with the question, what brings you joy? Just imagine how amazing it will be to see all that joy show up in the chat, right? Or for people to share that joy out loud, and how that can be a way to lift spirits in a really uncertain moment. And it's a way to control what you can control, right? We can't control what governments say about what can be open or not, but we can control how we find joy in our day. This is a tool, we won't do it now, but I would encourage you after the session to click on this link and to basically, I'll actually show you what it looks like. It's a self-compassion test, and you can take it and see how self-compassionate you are. And so it gives you, all these questions, and at the end, it lets you calculate your score, and it explains to you what your score means. So I would encourage you to take that test at some point so you can see where some areas that you are really doing well in terms of showing your own self-compassion, and where some areas are that you could work on. How many of you are doing the test now? Sometimes, I mean, it's hard to not when I show you the screen, but use it. And you can take it a number of times so you can see how well you do after you've worked on some things, right? It even, I think, sends you a report about what you might do differently. So this also is in your slide deck. It is language about how we talk to ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I often say things to myself that are really critical that I would never say to anyone else. Never, ever. And so it's a mark of how compassionate you are to yourself. So if you make a mistake, let's take the second example here. The critic in you might say, "What's wrong with you? Why would you do that?" Right? But the compassionate person in you says, "How human of you. What did you learn from that mistake?" It's the very language that we use with our students all the time. We would never ask them, "What's wrong with you?" if they make a mistake, right? And so practicing being as compassionate with ourselves as we are with other people is actually a healthy thing to do and will give us more bandwidth in order to support other people. Okay. Any thoughts or questions on nurturing self-care and compassion before we move on to our third area of nurture, which is creativity? Okay. So what we know in the world of a COVID pandemic, in the world of, in the United States, where we're talking a lot about a racial reckoning, in the world of an economic downturn, climate change, and climate issues, what we're finding in that world is that we are losing our capacity, some experts say, to be creative. We're losing creativity, which is horrible, right? If you think about all the ways that we leverage creativity to make change and to get things done and to learn. So what I would like you to do in the chat is to think about, and you can unmute as well, to think about how can you nurture or how do you nurture your creativity? How could you or do you nurture your creativity? Sorry, there's something wrong with my screen, so I'm going to share again. There we go. Okay. So let's see, how do you nurture your creativity? Balancing time spent with others with time for solitude. That's something I'm working on. I'm at home working. I have 3 children. They're in hybrid school. So sometimes they're at home online and other times they're in school. And so I have multiple things in my day happening at the same time in the same space. And I'm sure that that is the experience for a lot of you on this call, that we have our pieces of our lives are stacked on top of each other all day, every day. So I love the reminder of balancing the time spent with others with time in solitude. Making time to do things you love. That's wonderful. Oh, journaling and buying a paint easel, right? Try something new. For me, in these few months, really this last year of remote working, I've been doing a lot more experimenting with cooking and using different ingredients, spices, trying new combinations. And that's been really fun because that's something our family can do together. And we've been really creative in the combinations. So fueling creativity, I know that some of you talked about the ways that you're engaging your students in creative days and design challenges. Just really making sure that we don't lose sight of creativity while we're rushing, trying to figure out how to make school happen, in the ways that we've had to. And again, there's so much research that's been done on the value of creativity for problem solving, for learning, for feeling a sense of community, and for getting ourselves outside of the limits of what we first come to a challenge with, right? Building resilience and also raising spirits. So creativity is really important. Okay, so now we've gone through nurturing equity, inclusion, and belonging. We've gone through nurturing self-care and self-compassion. And now we're going to turn to a few tools that can allow us to sustain that work, all of that work, which is all hard work. But also what it reminds us of is that if we take time to show compassion and self-care for ourselves, if we take time to understand our commitment to equity and inclusion, and if we take time to think about why we do this, right? Why we do this work, then even in the challenging moments that we experience, we'll have more capacity to help others do the work, right? So meditation actually, and can I see a show of either virtual or actual hands? How many of you practice meditation? So I see a couple of people. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick view of the 5 science-backed reasons to meditate. So meditation helps you to understand your pain. And what we're seeing from research around the globe is that in our pandemic world, more and more people are reporting experiencing physical pain, and they don't really know where it's coming from. And a lot of it is because we're sedentary. We're sitting a lot, right? As I'm asking you to do now too. But we can understand our pain and reshape our relationship to it. We also connect better. So in order to, just as we've been practicing, if we can connect with our own breath, we can connect better with other people. If we can connect with ourselves, it gives us practice to connect and give others our full attention. It lowers our stress immensely. Even if you meditate for just a few moments a day, you will see the effects of lowering stress. Remember, those of you who are on the call at the beginning, that experience of listening to your breath and how you felt before you did that, and then how you felt afterwards, right? Decrease stress. It focuses our minds and gets us focused on a single task, as opposed to all the clutter that circles through our minds. Thanks, Rachel. I see your note. Thank you for being here. It allows us to reduce brain chatter. Okay, so this is a meditation that I've given you to do on your own. And I don't know that we're going to have time to do it. We might be able to end the session with this meditation, but if not, you'll have it with you to be able to do a body scan meditation. You can practice this on your own, but you can also play it for your class or for your teachers and have them do it as part of a meeting. Okay. Okay, now we turn to gratitude, which is also another practice of nurturing well-being. Gratitude is such a powerful practice, saying thank you, taking the time to ask, what is something that I can be grateful for from today? It doesn't have to be something big, but it actually has shown that showing gratitude actually, again, has great mental, physical, and social health benefits. And it strengthens our relationships in our communities if we take the time to share gratitude. Or as one person shared earlier, that idea of sharing random acts of kindness, right, can have the same positive effect. So I want you to take a moment and in the chat or in your own space, ask yourself either what progress can you celebrate? What do you appreciate about yourself? And a year from now, I want present day me to remember. So pick one of those prompts and share your response in the chat. So basically, what are you grateful for? What can you show gratitude towards? So I'll share my gratitude. I'm grateful for all of you deciding to spend time here in this session. So ask yourselves, this is actually, this visual is a prompt that you could give your faculty to practice gratitude, or to just say, I am grateful for, and allow your faculty or your students to share what they're grateful for. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to share, just as feedback, one thing you're grateful for about this session, and then we'll open up for discussion and closing. Yes, coming together, family, amazing connections that you've been able to make. It is amazing to think about how we have been able to be connected even while we're apart, right? And that for me is something I'm really grateful for. New perspectives on life, inspiration, and new resources. It's wonderful. So as I said, this is the last slide in the deck that I shared with you. So you can definitely reach out to me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. This is the link to the Klingenstein Center. So you can find out how to apply to our programs. And then this is my email address. So I'll look forward to hearing from you and hearing the kinds of things that you're trying to nurture self-care and compassion and awareness and community and belonging and equity in your schools. So I'm just going to open up for any questions or comments that folks have. What's wonderful about sessions like these too is that you have the slide deck to go back to and to pull from time to time. So I hope you see that as a helpful resource. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, so in the slide deck, I do have, I did share with you, as I mentioned, a meditation that you can do on your own. It's a body scan. So I don't know, Ed, if we could either do that now together, or we could pause and let folks go, and then you can do it on your own time in the comfort of your own space.
My guess is people would like the comfort of their own space, but I'm not sure. I was trying to say a second ago, the whole focus of this presentation has been so refreshing. It wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be, but but anyhow, I mean, I really enjoyed it, but it also, it affected me in some way in thinking, this is the kind of thinking that we need to give people more opportunity to engage in, because everybody is, as we said, they're so tired, they're angry, they're disappointed, they're trying to stretch themselves to do things that they used to do that they can't do today. Everybody's in a bit of a world of hurt, no matter how positive we try to stay. And the session tonight, I mean, it was really interesting. I hope more people will look at it online when we put it in the library here. But it's really kind of been mind and eye opening for me tonight to sit here and participate in this and hear what you have to say. So
Well,
I really want to thank you.
Thank you. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to connect with all of you and to really model what I see as, sharing information that's important for educators to have, but also sharing opportunities to practice what that information means in a real way, so that you feel the impact of it, but also you're able to take it back to your community so they can feel the benefit of it too. So I'm glad to hear that you felt it was refreshing and helpful. And I would love to hear back from you all as you start playing with some of these tools and ideas in schools, to see, even how the tools change depending on how your community responds to them. I would love to hear how things are working in your context. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Is that you or is that my phone? I don't know.
Sorry about that. But thank you all so much. So I think, if it sounds like I know that you all have you have your day ahead of you. So enjoy your days. It was wonderful meeting you. Thank you for engaging here, and I hope you stay connected to each other as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy and safe, everyone.
Yes.
Take care.
Lovely. Thank you all for
Thank
making
you
time
all.
for this. We'll look forward to seeing you at another session and look forward to seeing you at one of the conferences whenever we can get people to travel again.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.